Andrew?
I think it varies depending on what kind of scene it is, but I guess the most obvious thing to talk about is a dialogue scene, and I've kind of come up with a method for myself that, at least on the films with Darren, that maybe it's not the most efficient thing, but it's the most comprehensive thing for me, and it helps me feel like I've digested everything, which is I'll sit down and I'll look at the script for the scene and just read it once, just to try and remind myself of what the intention is of the scene, or what's going on, what the point is, what I need to get across in that scene. And then I'll take a quick look at the script notes and see if there's any really key bit of information of, like, if they went back to a setup because of some technical issue or anything, just so I have it in the back of my head. Then I'll string all the dailies together, shut the door, and just watch it without taking notes or anything else, just to try and get some reactions, try and listen. Darren speaks a lot on the set, talks to the actors a lot, never cuts, and like De Niro, and until it rolls out. So every take can have 30 or 40 restarts inside it, and so I'll just watch through that, and anything that grabs me in any particular way towards the intention of the scene, or any moment that surprises me, I'll just throw into a little roll and just keep it aside, and mark it, and just it's just something that I know I had a reaction to that related to what I just read. Then I'll go back and break down all the dialogue into stacks. Basically, every line of every scene just strung together in a row, every setup, every take. And that, for me, just totally breaks apart the original context of what the favorite takes were on the set for any number of reasons, whether it's the actor's favor, or the director's favor, whatever. It's just a whole new context, because the scene is a whole new context. So I have each bit of dialogue just strung together. And then I'll start with the first line of the scene, first moment of the scene, and make some kind of gut decision about how I want it to play out, what the vocabulary of the scene is, what the geography of the scene is, what information I want to give out when. And I'll pick my first line, and then that huge stack of however long it is of all the lines starts to whittle its way down from the beginning to the end. And I'll have marks on the things that I know I liked out of context, and see if I'm going to find my way to that or not, if the scene's going to take a new direction. But when you have these different takes and different performances, you have a whole new dialogue going on between these two actors. So often for me, I like to try and forget what worked about a take in its isolation, and just try and make the scene work and make the two actors really communicate with each other, and play around with ideas for that. So I will ignore what the selects were initially, start with the first take and first line, and then I'll run all the other lines against it and see which ones feel like an answer to it. And then I'll pick that, and maybe there are one or two. If there's another select, I'll put it to the side, and then keep building from there until I ultimately have the scene and it builds its own rhythm and dialogue. And often, along that process, I'll end up with little alternates and variations and little moments that I keep aside in a bin. Then I'll go back and look at the notes and see what the selects were. And more often than not, it's pretty much lines up with what they liked on the set, because if I'm watching the dailies and really pay attention to it and feeling them and experiencing what they experienced, then I can tell from the direction when they feel they've got it and when they don't, and it's usually in sync with that. And it's also very helpful for me to have those stacks later on when I'm working with the director to see what the alternates are. If we want to cheat a reading from one take into image from another take to try and make it more emphatic, or pull it back, or just calibrate the performances towards what's working in the scene. That's my working method for dialogue scenes. But like I say, every scene is completely different, so throw it out more often than